Animal Masters, Indiana super fan. Now, usually he's on the basketball side, but he's a big, passionate football fan. He is very knowledgeable. Daniel, introduce yourself to Buckeye Nation and to Hoosier Nation. Who are you, and why are you an Indiana super fan?
Well, hello. I'm Daniel McMasters. I have lived in Indiana my whole life. I'm from Delphi, Indiana, and I went to school and high school in Lafayette. Yes, in the heart of Boiler Country, but
Yeah,
diehard Hoosier through and through. Just for some indications of my fandom across the board. My high school years were the 3, 8, and 12 win seasons for basketball when Indiana was under sanctions, and that was my high school years in West
mm,
Lafayette in the Lafayette area. So if that tells you anything, I'm through and through. My first experience with Hoosier football that I can remember is I believe it was against Michigan State when Antoine Randall L was quarterback
he was
of the
disgusting.
Hoosiers back in the day. And so I've been a fan ever since. Obviously, most people would say, you know, I do pay attention to what Notre Dame does because,
Yeah,
thing is they win, here
naturally.
here in the state. And, I want an Indiana school to do well other than Purdue because I just can't ever root for Purdue in anything. It's just not in my blood. I know there's some Hoosier fans that are all about that life. That is not me.
Yeah,
But
not me either.
it's been few and far seasons where I've had something to talk about the football team, and even the great Don Fisher, the voice of the Hoosiers, had said in his radio show or an interview this week about the Battle for Atlantis basketball tournament that IU's participating in, and he said he's not going because there's football to watch.
Yep,
So if that tells you
good.
anything about what things are brewing down in Bloomington, that should be everything that you got.
It makes sense to me, man. Give us a little vibe and a feel for what Hoosier Nation is feeling right now. Is Hoosier hysteria at an all-time high, or just 2020 more excited?
This is like a long term rave because as a fan, you think maybe 4, 5 wins, coming after a one win season last year, or very few wins. I don't remember specifically, but they were picked to be second to last in the Big Ten preseason by the media,
Yep,
and they fired their coach, obviously Tom Allen, who's now with Penn State staff.
defensive coordinator,
But
right?
yes, he's a defensive coordinator and took a few players from IU with him. They went over to Penn State as well. So Kurt
He did.
Signetti coming in first year. You never know what a first year head coach is going to do. Certainly not what they've done. Taking 13 kids from his what was considered a JUCO style school, even though it wasn't JUCO, James
Yeah,
Madison. It certainly did not have the same respect as a Power Five team or even a Boise. But at the same time, he brought him over.
yep,
We're talking 2, 3, maybe 1 star recruits, if not no star recruit,
yeah.
and they have a chip on their shoulder. And this has been a season. IU fans, it's all about bowl game. If you can be bowl eligible, that's a good
Yeah,
year.
I
Well, they're
understand.
10-0. They're 10-0. They beat the defending champions, the defending champion runner-ups from last year. But that doesn't garner any sort of respect whatsoever from anyone in the media, as well as what I've seen online from both Hoosier and Buckeye faithful.
Yeah,
There's a whole lot of pointing fingers. Hey, they're not playing anybody, so this should be an easy roll game. And well, we'll get into the nuts and bolts of everything
we certainly
here
will. We're gonna
within
dive
this
into
hour.
it. We're gonna dive into it, Dan. And I really appreciate you joining us, man. Because honestly, when I was at school, when we went to school together, I don't know too many more passionate Indiana fans than that I met than you. And that was really surprising to me because I know Hoosier basketball was a big deal. They played for a national title. I think it was 2001 was the last time.
Correct. Mike
What's his
Davis.
name? what was the other guy's name? The tall, skinny, lanky, light skinned dude.
Well, you got Jared Jeffries was
Jeffries.
the main star on that team. Jeffrey Newton hit some big shots. Dame Fife, who's now was an assistant coach for Indiana
Yeah.
basketball last year or 2 years ago, then stepped away. And several others. Kurt Hastings also had a little stint in the NBA as well. But that team uh,
Yeah.
was really done by Bob Knight. But
Yeah, I got you.
basketball's king in Indiana, as most people know. And
Now, how
but now football. It's time for
how does that
football.
play? Because I've never seen Bloomington be filled with stands, filled the stands at Memorial Stadium with Indiana fans like I saw in the Michigan game. What is that like to see for your program?
It's surprising to some degree, but Signetti did challenge them after the first couple home games and saw that fans were leaving at halftime or the third
They
quarter
were.
because they were up by so many points. He said, "No, y'all need to stay." But it's not
Enjoy
a
the
culture we're
party.
used to. This isn't an SEC school where football is king. This is a basketball school where they stay the whole entire game, not football. So, like, to see them, especially in that Michigan and Nebraska game, both of those games, packed out the whole entire game, engaged fans, not just sitting there, being quiet. They were being loud as they could for the whole game is really great to see and good for the Brennan. And that all comes down to if we win, they'll come, right? And
Yeah.
that this I know that's butchering a little bit of Field of Dreams, but in sports,
Yeah.
that's how it goes. If you win, people show up, put butts in seats, and this is a magical run for them.
Before we get into some questions, I need a response to Rand City's comment. He's a regular Georgia fan on the channel. He says, and I quote, I hope Indiana loses by 50, so we, the playoff committee, will finally stop pretending they are a real team. What is your response to Rand City's comment? Wow.
Typical Georgia fan. I work with one. You know, the Bulldogs, nothing but respect, but let's face it, you got blown out.
Yep. Twice.
You got beat by Alabama, who you were supposed to win, because this Alabama team's no longer coached by Nick Saban. You know, it's all about matchups and individual week by week. You never know what you're going to get with Beck. Beck,
You're good at
you have
pick.
good Beck and you have bad Beck.
That's
We've
true.
seen it. So I mean, you
Let's
want
dive into
Indiana
this
to lose
matchup
by
just a
50,
little
though.
bit.
You want Indiana to lose by 50. I understand because the SEC is a little scared that they can't get 12 teams in the 12-team playoff. I understand.
Let them know.
It's okay.
Now, this specific matchup, man, Indiana is the 7th seed in the college football playoff rankings that just got released tonight, okay? They're the 7th seed. Who would they play?
Ole Miss, SEC.
My buddy Dave Johnson is an SEC Ole Miss diehard blowhard fan. He doesn't remember any glory days except maybe 2014, the Egg Bowl, when both Mississippi State and Ole Miss were undefeated. The only time I ever watched the Egg Bowl, by the way. And the only time I ever will, probably. Now,
I've watched the Egg Bowl multiple times, and
well,
Ole
here's the
Miss
thing.
normally wins. Let's be real, Ole Miss normally wins that game.
They do, and they take the cowbells and they stomp on them and they do what they do. Now, Indiana is undefeated, 10-0 for the first time in program history. Am I correct or am I wrong?
10-0, yes, first time, but they were undefeated
Yes.
one other season when they went to the holiday, or I think it was the Holiday Bowl. No, the Rose Bowl actually. They went to the Rose Bowl and
1967?
lost. Yes.
Yeah. I couldn't name the coach in 1967, and we don't need to if we don't need to right now. But Chris Signetti is the man right now. What kind of energy? Before we get into the specific matchup, do you like his snarkiness? He's a little bit snarky, or am I wrong?
I'm a Starkey person in general, as you know.
Yeah, I do.
Um, so I like the attitude. Why
I do
should we
too.
bow down to
Anybody?
the perennial powerhouses? Why does
Why?
it matter? Why can't Why can't a school like Indiana, that's been a football dormant school for
Yep.
years and years, why not us? That's his attitude. That's why he can't. Everywhere he's gone, he's won, as he stated, and that's been rehashed that interview over and over and over. And Google him. That's what he says. You know,
I love it.
but at the same time, he's passionate. He's confident in what he builds, and he only wants certain players. We've had a couple wide receivers deep in our roster that have transferred out because of playing time or
Yeah. Yep.
injury, both. It's
Yep.
it's hard to see people leave because of injury, and he doesn't want to redshirt them because he wants to see them fight back and fight for their place, and it didn't happen. You know, I hope it turns out for the better.
Rancy responds. You can read that aloud if you want to.
Oh, it's fine. 100%. This is a legendary year for Indiana football, and I'm happy I get to enjoy the season. But be real, Indiana isn't as good as anyone in the top 20. That's your opinion. That's your opinion. But let's see Georgia face off in Bloomington at the end of the year, and we'll
At
see.
night. At night in the cold in December.
Absolutely. In the cold, can SEC teams play in the cold? All the bowl games that SEC schools go to are deep in the South where it's nice and warm. They don't
Or
travel north very often.
in domes.
You know, outdoor facilities. Yeah, come to Indiana in November, December when it's 15 degrees outside. Your face is chilled being a fan.
Hmm.
Even going into early morning for tailgate parking. I've had to work, and my feet and hands frozen head to toe for
Frozen.
just standing out there for 2 hours with the
It
wind blowing.
happens.
Good luck.
Now that actually is a good point in college football. That is kind of a good point. But the thing is, the college football playoff has changed things, and there's home games now. If Ohio State loses to Indiana, it's Indiana versus Oregon for the Big Ten title, December 7th in Indianapolis for the first time ever. Two new teams will be playing in the Big Ten championship. I've always wanted to see Indiana in Indy, not at Ohio State's expense, of course, naturally. But if we were to lose to somebody, I'd rather it be Indiana than Oregon again a second time. That's for sure because Oregon fans are more obnoxious than Ohio State fans, and I'm an Ohio State fan. I know how obnoxious we can be.
I've seen the best and I've seen the worst of Ohio State fans, and I got nothing but respect for Ohio State. But at the same time, to get a chance to play in Indy would be a dream come true. I've already told both my family and my girlfriend, if Indiana does get that opportunity, I'm going to get tickets to see it live because it may never happen again.
I mean, never.
I don't want to be pessimistic to what Kurt Signetti's building because he just signed that
Yeah.
new contract to extend it to 8 years at Indiana with just back that Brinks truck up and deliver. But at the same time, it's not something we're used to. Indiana fans are going to be naturally pessimistic.
How many fans would you take with you to go to Indy if it happens?
As many that wants to come, I
Yeah.
would expect to see over half that stadium filled with red.
Well,
Now,
here's the
whether
thing.
whether Oregon wins or not, that's beside the point. That's the icing on the cake. Getting there is just the biggest opportunity.
Here's the thing.
That's what I think about this game, though, Pete. I think about this game. Indiana has nothing to lose. Everybody's
Okay.
picking them to lose by 20 plus.
So let's get into it. When Indiana has the ball, how are they going to look offensive? They average 43.9 points per game. You mentioned earlier before we went live. 43.9 a game. 40 what on the road?
43.3 points on the road. Yes, that's against Northwestern, UCLA, Michigan State. I get it. They don't play us all the bottom tier teams in the Big Ten. Nothing they can do about that but play the teams in front of them, though.
Yes, exactly. Now,
They don't
here's the
make the Big
thing.
Ten schedule.
They don't make the Big Ten schedule. Here's the thing. Indiana is going to get some primetime matchups now. on CBS, on NBC, on Fox Big Noon Kickoff. When Indiana hosts Ohio State next year, which it'll happen, I guarantee the Big Ten will make it happen. With Kurt Signetti, he's sticking around for sure now. With the $72 million contract. When Rourke has the ball, how is he going to maintain composure in the horseshoe with 110,000 screaming fans?
But that's a great question. We'll see. He will lean on his experience. Yes, he played at Ohio. You know,
Yeah,
that's the Bobcats aren't nearly the strength of the MAC as they are in the Big Ten. But at
they're
the
not.
same time, he's a 6-year vet. Like, if anyone's
Yeah,
got experience in high pressure situations, he will have it. The thing about the pressure is, will they get pressure? Yes, the offensive line late, and especially in that second half against Michigan, struggled very mightily against the uh, pass rush. But that defensive front of Michigan is bigger, probably their biggest asset on
they're
that
probably
Michigan
better than
team.
Ohio State's.
So I mean, if I believe every person on that offensive line is a transfer from JMU outside of one player who's been there from IU since
Mm.
they were, a freshman, you know. And Rand City saying Indiana reminds them of 2021 Cincinnati. That's possible, but at the same time, Cincinnati is also what, a Big East school,
They were
not a
Big
Big Ten
East,
school,
and
not
now
a Big Ten school. You got two. Let's be real. You have two conferences in college football now: the Big Ten and the SEC. You can make a case for the Big 12, but let's be real. Big 12 is not that strong top to bottom, and neither is the ACC.
yeah,
So really, it's the SEC versus the Big Ten. Now that USC and UCLA, perennial powerhouses, with Oregon and Washington coming over. So
is
you can make the
Indiana
comparisons all you want. It's fine.
or I'm sorry, Cincinnati had Ritter at quarterback. He's an NFL quarterback now. Is
Mhm.
Rourke getting NFL love right now, or not quite?
I mean, he is in talks for Heisman, so how many Heisman Trophy
Yeah,
candidates aren't NFL quarterbacks
right,
when
right,
they're
right, right.
when they're actually a quarterback? They're very few.
Yeah,
So of
exactly,
course, I'm sure
exactly.
he's getting scouted, and is he a top first round draft pick? I don't know. That's not up to me to decide.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's
It
whatever
sounds
the
like that's
teams
the way.
want and how they value him. But we do have some good quarterbacks from Indiana that have played in the NFL and that are currently in the NFL.
Yeah.
So
Um,
I mean, it's not a cradle of quarterbacks per se, but there are enough in there to
what
you
about
know spread some love.
what about Elijah Surratt, man? Is he gonna be able to get some separation?
Well, one thing I've heard a lot of people talk about is the emphasis on the back shoulder. And from even Ohio State fans, I've heard on podcasts and such similar to this saying, no one throws a back shoulder ball like Curtis Rourke does in the Big Ten,
Mm.
because that connection to Surratt is always there. It doesn't have to be deep; it can just be to the sticks. 9 times out of 10, he'll catch the ball. And from my understanding, that was one of the biggest detriments to Ohio State when they played Oregon at Oregon, is that matchup with the secondary on those similar back shoulder fades. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No,
That's what I've heard from Ohio State fans.
you're not mistaken at all. Dylan Gabriel. Here's the difference, though. Maybe not the difference. Maybe not the difference. But here's what Oregon did. They put Ohio State to sleep with these little short routes all the first 5 games of the year, and then they went over the top versus Ohio State. They didn't do that at all, and they haven't done it since, except
Hmm.
versus Michigan.
So maybe there's something there. As far as that wide receiver position, Indiana's got 5, 6 guys that are making an impact. Five wideouts and a tight end. They can beat you with several different receivers. Surratt doesn't always get the best numbers every single game.
Yeah.
You got Omar Cooper Jr. who is a deep threat over the top. You got Miles Price on crossing routes as well as uh, Nick Cross as well, or excuse me, Miles Cross.
Yeah.
And then you get hit with that, and then Keyshawn Williams comes off the bench because he's not a
Yeah.
starter and does crossing patterns or, your little bubble screens and getting outside and picking up chunk yardage. So
Yeah.
as far as the deep ball goes, they got guys who can make plays, and even Ohio State fans that I watched today said they may have a better wide receiver core than Oregon has. So it's just a matter of getting the ball in the hands and not
Well,
making the moment be too big, because we saw that with Michigan late. Surratt dropped a couple balls, and we'll see if he can, redeem himself that way and
right.
really help his draft stock as well. Since we talked about draft,
Well, the casual would say you got Elijah Surratt, nobody else. That's not true, is it?
no, there's 6 guys plus or 5 guys plus a tight end. Zach Horton's made several plays. He may only have 13 or 3 touchdowns on the year, but he's got 156 yards receiving as a tight end. I mean, that doesn't include what all he does blocking wise. I mean, Omar Cooper Jr., 527 yards receiving, 5 touchdowns. His
So keep
longest
an
is
eye out for Cooper
69.
Jr.
Absolutely. But these guys' long catches, Surratt's 71 is his longest catch of the year. 69 Cooper, 41 for
Yeah.
Price. Williams got 52. Cross 33, and then Horton obviously 18. But, they can beat you all the ways, and that's just including the wide receivers. That's not including what the running backs do out of the backfield, catching the ball as well as running.
I understand. Now, here's a question for you, man. How well does Indiana run the football?
I
Do they try
mean,
to run the football balanced offensive set, or are they more air raid?
I don't know. How about you should ask Washington how Indiana runs the ball?
Yeah.
Uh, Indiana was without Curtis Rourke in that game against Washington. They
Yep.
were they had their backup, Trace Jackson Davis brother Taven Jackson was the quarterback. He's the backup quarterback, and I was watching the game. I was telling myself, well, he's going to have to make some plays with his arm to get us that victory. But in
Yeah.
that late third, early fourth quarter, they did nothing but pound the rock with
Yes.
both Justice Ellison and Tyson Lawton. I mean, they're averaging looks like 5.7 yards per carry for Justice Ellison and 4.8 for Tyson Lawton. Both have 9 touchdowns on the
Wow,
year.
that's a lot.
So, and Justice Ellison has 701
Yep.
yards from
Yep.
scrimmage and 519 for Tyson Lawton. So they can
So you
beat
got
you
to
with the air. They can beat you on the ground.
you can ask
They'll take what
Nebraska
the
how
defense
too.
gives you. Yeah, ask Nebraska. Nebraska didn't give up a touchdown, uh, a rushing touchdown the whole season until they played Indiana, and Indiana just ran it down their throats. I mean, I know you don't. It's silly to compare common opponents,
It
but
is.
that's the only game. That's the only game where there's any separation between Indiana, Ohio State, and the common opponents is that Nebraska game.
Yeah.
Nebraska was at the shoe the following week after getting their butts spanked by Indiana, and they
Yep.
only won 21-17.
You're right.
So it's not insurmountable. You know, the
Nah.
thing I want to show people that are listening and watching this podcast is it should not be a foregone conclusion that Ohio State's just going to walk over Indiana. This isn't, you know, the Indiana of the last few years. This is a completely different team, and I noticed it week 2, the way they were finishing games, because I've seen the Tom
Yeah.
Allen,
Yep. Yep.
bubble season that college football had, and
Yep.
they were a flash in the pan, but they won the close games. Every game was a close game.
Yeah.
Well, until Michigan, they blew every team out. And the fun fact about Michigan game, if it weren't for an interception by Curtis Rourke giving
Yep.
them a short field, they wouldn't have scored a touchdown in that game.
I'm saying, bro.
So it's the lack of respect that irritates me, but I keep it built inside because that should fuel the players. Hey, no one's given us a chance. No one's given us a prayer because Ohio State is the more talented team. Ohio State has the deeper team as far as
Yeah.
recruiting classes is concerned. There's no reason Indiana should compete. But how many times have we seen in sports do weird things, and the teams that should win don't and get embarrassed?
Yeah. Now, let's transition a bit. You're totally right, by the way, Dan. But let's transition to the other side of the football. When Ohio State has the football, who are they going to scheme around? Who are they going to avoid on the Hoosier defense?
I mean, Mikael Kamara. I mean, the
Yeah.
leading sack statistically in the Big Ten
Yep.
is Mikael Kamara. I mean, it's crazy that we get to talk about stats like this
Yeah.
because I'm just not used to it. I mean, with Kamara, he's getting 9.5 sacks this season.
Yep.
9.5. 14.5 tackles for loss.
Dang, bro.
Where'd he come from? I forget. Oh, James Madison. That's right.
Boom.
Aiden Fisher, the leading tackler on the team, middle linebacker. Where'd he
Yep.
come from? Oh, James Madison. That's right.
Boom.
You know that defensive front is strong, but most of them have come from James Madison. Four out of their top five tacklers are
Yeah,
James
that's right.
Madison transfers. So
Now, before we continue to talk about the defense, there's a question that came to my mind. There's a kind of curveball question, but I'll save this question. I'll save this question for later. Okay, so Will Howard, Emeka Egbuka, Carnell Tate, Jeremiah Smith, Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins, Scott Jr. How are you going to slow down this Buckeye offense? How? What's his name has to get pressure in the face of Howard, right?
you would think, when they're passing the ball, but defensively, they're averaging giving up 2.46 yards per carry.
Yeah.
You get Will Howard in long downage and distance situations on third down. Can he handle the pressure? I think you need to keep him in the pocket as well. You can't let him scramble because that's how he really hurt Penn State is with his
Yes.
legs
Yep.
scrambling, trying to make
Yep.
plays.
Well, he's hard to
But
sack. He's 6'5", 240.
this is a game where something's got to give because both offenses and defenses perform well and perform well under pressure. So to me, this is a battle of honestly the line depth and the line play. Can Indiana's O line depth and D line depth hold enough when the starters are getting a breather?
Respond to that.
That's the case. Oh, I see it. Um, the only way Indiana stays in this game is if Ohio State stops themselves on drives. And you saw that against Northwestern. I saw that against Purdue. Yes, Ohio State blew Purdue out of the water. I watched the first quarter, first half of that game.
Not
Purdue
pretty,
was
right?
right in there.
Not
If
pretty.
Purdue would have went for it on fourth down and scored a
Yeah.
touchdown or got the first down, it's 7-14. That's a completely different game. Instead, they kicked the field goal, missed the field goal, and that's all she wrote.
That's all she wrote. That's all it takes.
A little bit, of pressure. We'll see what happens. And that's one of my keys for Ohio State is can they jump out on Indiana early and put pressure on them,
Well,
or
that's the
can
thing.
Indiana get the pressure and jump out and see how Ohio State
Ohio
responds?
State
They've gone down
notoriously
early. Yeah, first quarters. I heard that. First quarters, they struggle. Struggle
struggle
bus. They were down 10-0 against Penn State in the first quarter.
in the first 8 minutes. Yeah. Huh.
I mean, you give 2 touchdown early advantage to Indiana. I promise you, they're going to make it extremely hard for you to come back.
Yeah. Here's another thing I want to talk about: the run game. What is Indiana giving up rushing wise per game? Do you have those stats by you,
Per game, give me just a second here.
or what's their ranking?
That's offensive
It is. Yeah, that's.
numbers.
I knew I kind of threw you a curveball there, but defensively, I know the Buckeyes are going to try and run with the hammer, Quinshon Judkins, and the lightning, the thunder and lightning of Henderson and Judkins. They're going to try and attack you guys, and you need to be able to stop the run. That's Big Ten football for you.
All right. Uh, I'm almost positive it's around 89 yards per game. Is
That's
what they give up
phenomenal.
rushing it.
That's why you're 10-0.
It's under 100. I know that
That's
off
why
the
you're
top of my
10-0.
head. Absolutely.
Now, some people might question your record and say, "Hey, you haven't beaten a bowl eligible team yet, even this late in the season." What do you say to that?
Well, if you want to compare schedules, let's look at Penn State's schedule.
Yeah, West Virginia. Ugh.
I mean, yes, they're not 100 like the strength of schedule that Indiana has,
Yeah,
but you know, if we're being honest, if Indiana beats Ohio State, what quality win do they have on the year?
yeah.
Penn State? Well, who
Penn
did
State.
Penn
That's
State
it.
beat?
Top five Penn State team. That's it.
We can play the what if game
You
and who
right
who they played all day long. Look at
all day long.
Texas's schedule. Texas hasn't played anybody. Oklahoma's not nearly what they were supposed to be. Michigan wasn't supposed to be. Indiana would have beaten a ranked opponent in Nebraska if Nebraska could have, held on to something, but
Yeah,
they lost to Illinois and immediately dropped out. So at that
they
time,
did.
so
They
you
did.
know,
So
if you
it's
looked at
not
the
necessary.
schedule in the preseason,
You
if you looked at
play.
the schedule in the preseason, Peter, sorry to cut you off. You play the teams on the schedule, but the teams that Indiana has beaten so far in the year were supposed to do better than what they have in the Big Ten.
Mhm.
UCLA was supposed to be mid-table. They kind of are record-wise, but in the Big Ten, they weren't great starting out.
They weren't.
Uh, Michigan State was supposed to have a little bit of a better year.
Yeah.
Michigan was a defending national champion. They weren't supposed to drop off that much. Washington wasn't
No.
supposed to drop off that much. They lost Penix and Rome Oduzze and a few other key players, but a lot of that team's back. You
Yep.
know, they can't help the schedule that how it shaped out in front of
Yeah.
them.
Exactly. Especially from the Big Ten Conference.
Right.
It's a
You didn't
nine-game
expect it.
schedule.
Who would have thought USC would be as lackluster as they are? Well, but in general, like
But
historically,
not that bad, though. Not that bad.
you talk about brand loyalty and stuff. A lot of people have been throwing that term around,
Yeah.
especially with
Yeah.
the college football playoff committee.
Yeah.
You got brands like UCLA and USC that were supposed to come in here and teach these Big Ten people a lesson and
Right.
welcome to real football. Well, that's not have been the case outside of Oregon, but Oregon struggled with Wisconsin last week. They could have easily lost that game.
Talk about a struggle win.
You know, the
No.
new shape of the Big Ten and SEC and college football landscape in general has thrown many wrenches in it and how things are planning to go.
Well, one thing Rob and I, my co-host, talked about when we were doing our preseason previews is what teams are going to benefit from a 12-team playoff. We picked Penn State because they've missed it barely every year because they lose to Ohio State and they lose to Michigan. Some years they lose to Michigan. Some years they beat Michigan. They don't beat Ohio State. They beat them once under James Franklin, one time,
Right.
in a fluke block punt or field goal, block field goal. And hey, respect. They won it. Trace McSorley, Saquon Barkley. That was one heck of a squad. It wasn't a fluke, but that team lost to Pitt, bro. So anyway,
Yeah.
and they lost 49-10 to Michigan. So now the Hoosiers come to town. Do you have them taking a W or going home with a loss? I need to know a score prediction coming up for you real soon. You don't have to give it just yet if you're not ready. But if you're ready,
Oh,
man, give a score prediction.
I'm bullish. I pick my boys. I pick my team and almost any I don't see a team out there. I'm talking to you, Rand City. None of those SEC boys. I'll take my boys all day long. Let's see. I want to see. I want to see. Give them a fighting chance. I have them winning by 12, getting a
So
late touchdown to seal
reverse
it.
of the spread, basically.
Absolutely. I think it's possible. One stat to keep an eye on though. Indiana has not turned the ball over on the road.
Damn, damn, I didn't know that.
They
That's
played at the
huge.
Rose Bowl. Uh,
They played at
I think they
UCLA.
have a few. I think they have a few fans that hold in that capacity, right?
Just a
Just a
hundred
little bit,
thousand, just 90,000. That's it.
you know.
Now, so you have the Hoosiers winning by 12 and taking the spot in Indianapolis. The first spot would go to the Hoosiers over the Ducks, over Ohio State, over anybody. If they beat Ohio
That would
State and
be.
they lose to Purdue, God forbid, they'd still go to Indy.
They would still go to Indy because they would win the tiebreaker.
They'd
They'd be
win the
the
tiebreaker.
2 seed in that, but they would have the tiebreaker.
Ohio State would have 2 conference losses. Oregon maybe undefeated, maybe not. They got a Washington problem. Dan Lanning does. He's 0-3. So yeah,
Never
he's
say
got to
never.
fix that.
But what? Okay, what would you do? You got a one loss. Let's just say a one loss Oregon.
Yeah.
If they lost to Washington, what do you do
There'd be
as the
some
committee? How far
crazy.
would you drop them? Would that be enough to create some interesting matchups with SEC schools creeping up?
That'd be a bad loss for them, bro. Real talk.
But it would throw a wrench in everything. Just like if
So
you
I'm
know
rooting for it.
Georgia loses another one, are they out?
Probably not. Probably are. Yeah, I would say so.
If
Yeah.
Tennessee loses, Tennessee's got 2
Done.
losses.
Done.
Alabama, they got 2 losses. Alabama,
Done.
we've seen stranger things happen in the Iron Bowl.
Come on, Auburn. Come on, Washington. Come on, Team Chaos.
It's chaos, and Indiana winning would be chaotic for everyone because they said even if Indiana kept it close against Ohio State, I've seen people say they don't deserve to be in the playoff.
I think that's
And
bullcrap.
I don't I a one-loss team, I don't see how you can't reward them. You take the brand loyalty, you put a one-loss
Shove
uh
your brand
with the
loyalty.
same schedule and everything, you put a Wisconsin sticker on there, they're in the playoff.
They're in the playoff. You put
So why does it
a
matter? Because Indiana's been
Washington
bad.
sticker on there, even. They're in the playoffs. You
Right.
put a UCLA,
Iowa,
Iowa,
UCLA, USC.
Illinois, even. Maybe. Maybe.
Yeah,
Maybe.
maybe. Man,
Maybe.
I don't think Bielema puts them that far over the edge.
No, he's not there yet. He's a good coach, but he's not that good of a coach. He's not elite coach. Anyway, so the Hoosiers win it by 12. Do you have a final score prediction, or do you not really do that?
I don't deal with numbers. I just, you know,
Just by 12. You win by
I
12.
I think it's good. I think it's going to be close, and then Indiana's going to get a chance to push it to 2 scores. It's going to be similar to how Penn State and Ohio State have
Here's the thing.
ended.
I think
Similarly,
Indiana might jump out to a 14-0 lead.
could.
Ohio State starts really poor, even at home. Now they're gonna be fired up. If they don't come out fired up for a
Are
top
they?
5 showdown at home,
Are they though? You got Big Blue the following week.
they're a
Everybody's
little
telling you, "Oh, you're
distracted,
going to
aren't
be
they?
so great." Everybody's saying, "Oh, you're so great. Kill you're going to
The
kill
Hoosiers.
Indiana," and then it's all about Michigan the next week. Okay,
Well, yeah. And you got 2 weeks to prepare for Ohio State.
correct.
That's going to play to your advantage. You're going to score on your opening drive. I guarantee it.
I think we've only had one, maybe 2 games this year where we haven't scored on our opening drive, so
Yeah,
I expect it.
your scripted drive or whatever people like to call it, it's going to be successful.
Now, do you believe that coin toss wise, if you win it, do you defer? Do you take the ball?
Ryan Day is so
Norm,
unpredictable in that. He's so
Normally,
unpredictable.
you would defer, but Indiana likes
No,
the
no.
ball first.
So does Ohio State. So did
So
Urban Meyer did more than Ryan Day. Ryan Day is a little smarter with that. He's a little more calm with that. Now he likes to rah rah and jump around and get in on the hoopla and the pregame and the postgame festivities. He gets in the crowd and dances around and stuff like that. But he's a young guy. He's only 41, I think. So respect and let him do what you got to do. Connect with your team. Just like Signetti, he's a great molder of men. That's what I like about Kurt. I think he actually cares about team chemistry. I think he cares about his players. I think he is a good man. I'll say that. I don't know if Tom Allen was a good man per se. Um, I know Jim Harbaugh wasn't, and that's not my bias speaking. That's 65 years of evidence, or however old he is now. So anyway, now Kurt Signetti
all you have to know about Kurt, Peter, all you have to know about Kurt. Who was who did he coach under and recruit several NFL caliber wide receivers
under Nick Saban, right?
at Alabama?
At Bama.
Nick Saban doesn't bring in coaches who don't know how to
Mm,
coach and mold
no.
people.
Now I will give my score prediction. I am bullish too. Now here's the thing. I think Indiana jumps out to a 14-0 lead. I do. Or maybe 13, maybe 10, maybe it'll be a lot to a little at the beginning, and then Ohio State will say, "This is some bull. We're at home. Let's get going." Then the real game begins. Not the real game. It already started. Indiana took a 14-0 lead or whatever they do. And then the ebbs and flows of a college football Saturday start to come into the game. Whoever turns it over or does not turn it over will win this game. Whoever keeps the ball secure and is not loose with the football. Ohio State has proven they can be loose with the football. They proved it versus Penn State and they still won by a touchdown. They proved it versus Oregon, and they still really should have won that game. Things went against them. No excuses. Ohio State lost fair and square, in my opinion. There was no tomfoolery at the end, like some like to claim in Buckeye fandom. I don't claim that at all. We lost by one, whatever. We lost. Now, my prediction is 45 for Ohio State, 21 at the end of the game for Indiana. Not because I think Indiana is such a bad team. I think they are going to build something so dominant under Kurt Signetti if he stays in Bloomington, which I think he will. I don't think he's leaving. He seems like a loyal man, a man of his word. I hope he is. I hope he doesn't bolt. Some people sign a contract and bolt for a higher one. I hope Kurt stays in Bloomington until he retires. I hope they build a statue for Kurt Signetti. I think in 2 to 3 years, Indiana will be almost a lock for Indianapolis. They'll be right there with Oregon, Ohio State.
Here's one thing, Peter, to just bring back to your memory.
Yeah.
Just remember how uncomfortable you were in 2020.
For a short time, yes.
42-35, Ohio State beat Indiana at the shoe.
At the shoe. I
In
hope it's that exciting.
Indiana all time is 12 and might as well say 12 and 80 with 5 ties sprinkled in. You want to know what the record split on that is?
I'd love to know.
Indiana 2 wins, 29 losses, 1 tie at home. Away 10 wins, 50 losses, 4 ties.
In Columbus, you're better.
Historically.
Now, that's
Haven't
really
won since
interesting.
88. Haven't won since 88 in the series.
It's been a while. I was born in 88, so.
So I'm not saying they're going to. I'm saying I give us a puncher's chance. And
Hey,
there's
man.
something in the air. There's
There's
something in
something
the
in
air,
the air,
man.
and Buckeye Nation better be ready if this is a close game. I don't want to hear complaining. I don't want to hear whining. Buckeye Nation is so petty. It's so whiny, dude. I can't stand the online fan base for Ohio State. I really can't. I know I'm part of it. I am part of the online fan base, but I try not to be whiny. I try not to make excuses for Ohio State when they lose. I take the loss. I don't whine. I don't complain. I don't moan about the refs. If Ohio State loses at home, it's because Indiana was the better team. Period. Period. You shouldn't lose at home. Period.
No,
To anybody.
Indiana hasn't lost to anyone, so we'll see.
Indiana's 10-0. They have a better record. The Hoosier Nation is excited now. The last thing I want to ask before we jump off of this live here, man, is you already kind of answered it, but Indiana's in the playoffs no matter what, right?
In my mind,
Mine
I
too.
can't
Mine
speak for the
too.
committee.
They do. They do
I
some
think the
wonky things,
committee.
don't they?
I think the committee, if they can find a way to sneak an extra SEC school in there, they will.
They do some really wonky things. Now, I have Ohio State. Actually, I'll change it. 45-24 Ohio State. And you have a
Good luck.
12-point Hoosier
Good
win.
luck scoring 40.
I don't know if we'll score that much. I got to see more of your defense. Here, full disclosure, Dan. I've watched Indiana, Nebraska, and that is about it. And I watched a little bit of Michigan because I was with my nieces. I would have watched the full game, but I was with my nieces, and you know how that goes. You got to play uncle.
I hear you.
You know, and
I've
so
watched
I
every
haven't
single
seen their
game.
defense. I need to. Here's the thing. I have this historical Indiana in my mind, the Kevin Wilson, okay?
Right.
Great offense,
Poor
so defense.
Poor.
Yeah, even
I'm
poor.
not giving you so. It's poor.
It was poor, wasn't it? That's why he was Ohio
It's been
State's
poor for
offensive
a while.
coordinator, not head coach at Ohio State.
I mean,
Now,
he was the head coach during the Nate Sudfeld years. They didn't produce too many defensive players.
just McFadden, I think was his name. No, that was Tom Allen. Wasn't it?
Okay.
I don't know. Whatever.
It was close. Those two, had so many
Yeah.
overlap.
There was some overlap. But anyway, hey, Dan, I want to thank you for coming on tonight. We really appreciate you having on. And if you win, I'd love to have you back on. If you lose, your choice,
Hey, I take my lumps just like everybody else.
Good. All right.
I don't run away from no criticism. Hey, if you guys win by a lot, according to everybody else, you should have, and I'll tip
Yep.
my cap. But I think this is a closer game than what people realize.
I hope you know what? Here's the thing. I love close games. They get my heart going. They get the heart pounding, thumping a little bit. I'm feeling it right now. I got the butterflies going in my stomach, man. I'm excited for this top 5 showdown. In 2020, it was the first ever top 10 showdown between Ohio State and Indiana. This year, 2024, 4 short years later, the first ever top 5 showdown between Ohio State and Indiana in history. So,
Should be fun.
Go Bucks. God bless. We'll see you on the next one. Thanks again for joining us, Dan. We will see you on the next one, all right?
Sounds good. Go Hoosiers.
All right. Have a good night.
All right. Bye.
Bye.